What is up, everybody? I am back with Vanity. Dude, I feel like you're my most repeat guest, maybe, because this is like the third time. And I've done loads of people twice,
Is it
but
three? It is.
I
You're
think
right.
it's the third
Yeah,
time. Yeah, it's
yeah.
crazy.
Because we did one with your old channel, like the early one in Valorant. I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah. That's true. That's
We did
true.
one on that, then we did like a normal DDK one. And now I'm back again.
Back again. Yeah, you just love to talk, and it's great because I do as well. And I think this there's lots to talk about. Obviously, this another reason why you're a great guest for any podcast. Not that I need to like plug you to get people to invite you to their podcast or something, but it's just because you're so easy to talk to. Like you're one of those people that's just like really easy to jam with, and there's loads to talk about in the Valorant scene recently.
Yeah.
But I feel like one place I definitely want to start is with this sentiment that I think I had and I think many other people had, which was it kind of felt like you may have been kind of out of franchised Valorant because you kind of had a few rosters, things didn't really work out, and then you kind of dropped down, and that's got to feel very scary because I mean I feel like most
Yeah.
people aren't getting back in.
I mean, like looking back, I definitely don't think I should have joined Shopify because I don't think it did anything. Not even like the team, like for what it did for me, I guess. I just don't think I was like ready to join a team. I think I kind of rushed it. I don't like regret playing on the team, but like if I could go back, I wouldn't have joined. Just because I think it just jumping into something too fast, like I needed like a break for sure. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I realized. Like after that team, it's like, okay, I just need to not do anything for like a couple months and just like reset. But yeah, I mean, I don't regret playing. Like the org was great. Players were good to play with. I wish I was in a better like mental space at the point so I could have helped them more. But I do think I had a positive impact on the players. It's like Vic and Mata, I think they've reached out to me and said like I helped them a lot, even though the team was like not in the best spot. But at least that's the least I can do, right? I can try to help.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at this point, you're super tenured in Valorant. You don't
It's actually
necessarily
insane to think about.
right. Yeah, you're like you are
It's
basically
actually
like
insane.
what's a good comparison? I'm trying to think. I can't think of a good comparison, but I'll tell you the comparison I was looking for. Because my mind is just sort of getting a mental block. But I was trying to think of just imagine a like pretty well-known like American in-game leader in CS now.
Deal.
What's that? Steel?
Steel would
Yeah,
probably be
you're
the
Steel
best one.
basically. You're basically like Steel. Although you've lasted a bit longer, sadly, because obviously for
Yeah.
those people that don't know, obviously the iBuyPower stuff happened, and obviously to Steel's credit, I mean he kind of exonerated himself in a way. I feel like most people there's no way that they would. Like he kept grinding through it and produced so much value for the community, was still like a pillar and still brought up so many players and all sorts of stuff. Like he did so much for the scene.
Yeah, I mean, I love that guy. He's one of my
Yeah.
favorite people I've ever met in esports. I think he's hard. He's like a very interesting character. I don't think he's hard to work with, personally, but I think he pushes people, and I think it's kind of the reason I liked him so much is like he would always push me to be like the best that I can, and I think it's something that I took from him that, I mean, I definitely did it in the past, but it's something that I definitely think he's very good at is getting the most out of the pieces he has, even if they're not like say the best players in the world. He's very good at getting them to be a very good team, even without like with their shortcomings, whatever they may be.
Yeah, I love Josh as well. Like I'm a really big fan. I hung out with him at so many events. Like back in, I mean, there's
He's a great
the
guy.
iBuyPower event in 20, the event that iBuyPower won, which was the Face It finals in Milan, which was like the
Yeah.
first like Face It LAN finals ever for CS. And yeah, I hung out loads with him at that event, and iBuyPower won that event, and he's like a super cool guy to hang out with, and he's like very nerdy, but just like in a super endearing way, and like
I think that's why I like him.
Yeah, he's super genuine with that, and I don't know, he's a great guy. He comes off like really toxic on his like streams and stuff like that, but he is like one of those people, in person he's like super nice person to be around most of the time.
That's a lot of people, I think, in esports. I don't think there's very many people who I've met in esports who aren't like good people. There's a few, but for the most part, I feel like most gamers are pretty like a lot more normal in real life
Yeah.
versus like what you see on streams. I think not all, but I'd say a large majority are pretty cool people in real life, even if like they may be toxic or whatever you want to say like online. I think most people are, I don't know, at least CS players are older, so maybe that's a part of it. In Valorant, you don't get the chance to meet nearly as many people due to the lack of events. but even the people I've met, like Valorant has like Boaster and Redgar, like those two like stick out the most to me as like genuinely just like really, really good people. And it's
Yeah.
like good that they were like early on in the scene to promote like some form of like positivity, I guess.
Yeah, I totally feel that. Like those two names, especially in person, there is like an aura about them that's just so authentic that they're just so
Yeah.
them. I don't know. It's a weird thing to explain, but yeah, it's impossible not to feel like very comfortable.
I think it's the same reason I like Steel a lot. He's just like he's who he is. He doesn't like hide it, and I think I
Yeah,
always tend to like lean towards being friends with those people
yeah,
because I think that a lot of gamers in general, a lot of gamers in general are younger, so they have like identity issues, I guess you could say, and it's very nice to meet people who are just like happy being themselves, and I think that's what those two in specific are. They're just themselves. Like they don't try to be
yeah.
anything they're not.
I guess it is kind of weird, isn't it? Because it kind of feels like there's a huge incentive for you to kind of play a character on the internet because you kind of are on a
100%.
stage. You're kind of like on a stage in front of thousands of people, whether it's like on your stream or on Twitter or whatever. And that's like where most people spend most of their time. So they're on
Yeah,
a stage
100%.
most of the time.
I think that's a good way to word it. I think that like regardless, like you're a pro player, but you're also an entertainer, and I think it's something that people are not the best at balancing it, which is understandable because it's very hard to do both. But those two in specific are, I don't know, unapologetically themselves, and I think it's admirable.
Yeah. Have you ever? I mean, you've never necessarily been one to kind of either mince your words or like not be an outspoken person. Have you ever run into any moments like with social media where you feel like, oh, this really like sucked, or whether it's like feeling pressured or people attacking you or like just something shitty? Has that happened to you?
Why are you trapping me? What did I do? What did I do?
Yeah, of course. I think that's kind of it happens in esports regardless. Like even if you're not like outspoken, like I think like the best example, Chaos. Like the only person that really was remotely outspoken on the team was me, and all of my teammates got a ton of hate for it. But obviously, like you're in a spotlight, so you're going to have a lot of people that don't want to see you do well, and it is what it is. There's like that's a lot of it's jealousy for sure. I think at least that's like how I view it. Like I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when people lose and they smile, the fans don't like that, bro. Like first it was me at lock-in, and then Sadhak in Tokyo. They went out like 8th place or something. They had like a really poor event, and people were like attacking him. It's like, bro, like he's a pro gamer. He gets to travel the world, do what he loves. Like, yeah, it sucks he lost, but his teammates are all like super sad. He's trying to cheer them up. It's kind of the same way I view it. It's like that's like my role, I guess, or that's how I've always been. It's like I'll be the one to try to bring us back, even if it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like it's funny because it's not like. I mean, I can guarantee anyone like if there's a pro that loses in a match, they feel like absolute shit, and it's like, it doesn't matter what you see on their face. They feel like absolute shit. And just imagine like one of many reasons why. Like your entire career, like your entire like who you are as a person, all your energy goes into being really good at something, and then when you actually lose, you feel worthless because your whole self-worth is justified against the thing you spent all your time doing, which you just failed at. So that in of itself feels like shit. And like losing always feels like shit. It doesn't matter.
I think that's something that I've gotten a lot better at the older I get. Is like, not tying everything I am as a human into being like a pro. Like obviously it's a large part of my life and it does mean a lot to me, but I try not to let results necessarily like dictate how I view myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's something that's benefited me a lot because it's a lot easier to like realize, well, we had a bad match, but at least, like I still get to do what I love, and it's easy to do, I guess, for me, but I think it's difficult for some people to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's crazy because some people will be depressed for like multiple like days, and like, do you need to be depressed for that long? I mean, it's I used to have like in the early days, I had a mentor who was like, I'm gonna allow you to feel really shit for a day, and then the next day you're working, type of thing, to kind of, because obviously there is like some level of like processing and dealing with it, but everyone deals with it differently. So what has been most helpful for you in terms of dealing with those losses to kind of make sure that you are able to process it properly, but at the same time, like get back on your feet as quickly as you can at the same time.
I think it's harder in Valorant simply because the match schedule is very sporadic. Like we have a 6-month off season. Even again this year, it's another 6 months or maybe 5 months this year. I don't know. But I think it's a lot easier to brush off losses in Counter-Strike simply because you have a lot more chances to show like what you're capable of. And in Valorant, it's like you lose one match and it's potentially like your season's over, right? Like in Kickoff, for example, is like a great example of that. It's like you lose 2 games, you're not playing for a month and a half. In CS, like you lose 2 games, you can play again like 3 days later, a week later, and you have a chance to like compete again. And I think that's something that is difficult to deal with in Valorant due to the scheduling.
Yeah, for sure. It's pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal. Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, having been on the team with 100 Thieves last year, like obviously, yeah. I don't know, man. It really sucks. It just feels like you're just like stuck
like,
there.
There's no other way to put it. It's
yeah. I don't know. It does. I don't. It's hard to put into words completely, but it just feels like there is like this sweet spot in the amount of kind of off season time you get, and like you're saying, basically, like at least having something else to go and compete in, because it also like you get kind of iced out on competition reps. I feel like, and that
100%.
definitely matters too.
I think that's definitely the hardest part, I guess. If you're not continuously winning matches and like making it super deep in events, it's hard to keep up like the confidence you need to have on stage to perform well. And I think that's just something that a lot of teams struggle with. I mean, this 100 Thieves team is like a great example, right? Like, I don't think they've won a best of 3 since like May of last year. And it's like they haven't had a ton of chances, but still, it's like that's just depressing. Like that weighs on your mental. Like, oh, like you forget how to win, I guess. So you kind of just default into like playing not your best, which is very hard for most people to deal with.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting from just the psychological kind of phenomenon of that, because I totally agree with you. I think there is like some feeling like there's like when you're winning, like there is like a confidence you can kind of draw from because of like the wins that you've had, and it's just something that you just get to feel that it's like a boost in how you feel, and it works, like you're saying, the opposite way too, so that it's like it almost makes it so that your ceiling is lower until you eventually
100%.
get the win. It's so weird how it works.
I think that we had when I was on United in Counter-Strike, we were probably top 4, top 5 in America, and online we were probably top 2. I think the only team we lost to was Liquid, but we never got over the hump on LAN. And I think even if we just got like 1 win, it would have made my teammates realize like we are a good team and like we deserve to be at these events, but we just kept like having the most depressing losses ever, and it like weighs on people's mental for sure. And I think it's very hard to deal with, especially in an ecosystem as like fragile as Valorant, right? Like you don't get to play much, and when you do get to play, it's like so high stakes because like how infrequent matches are, right? Like you have to win when you play, or it's like very, very difficult to deal with.
Yeah. Are there any things that you've done to kind of like try to help develop your mental game at all? Like because I know there's like sports psychologists like all over the place these days, which is great. But I'm curious, like for yourself, if because of this, like the additional pressure you get in Valorant compared to CS where there's more reps, is it something you've tried to develop?
I'd say I haven't done much actively in a long time because I kind of like figured out what works for me. When I first got cut from United, I kind of did like a lot of introspection. I think that's the right word. And I like read a lot of books, whether that was like sports psych or like just general like random life books, like things like that. I read a book by like what's the name? Self-Compassion: The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself. I think this book helped me a lot because it's like you're not gonna really feel good about yourself if you're just constantly like really, really mean to yourself, and I think it's hard for a lot of people to do that. But I think it's something that definitely benefited me a lot. But I haven't been doing it a bunch because I feel like I kind of took the things that I needed from the books I was reading and applied it to like how I live my life, and I think it's helped me a ton.
Yeah, you're someone. I know when we've had previous conversations too. You've always had a focus on leadership as well, and I imagine it's like extremely important that. Yeah, it seems as though for you there's a value in how you represent yourself because that's going to reflect onto your teammates, and you take sort of that that kind of, I feel like you always are a captain kind of energy type of person in any team that you're on. You know, not just the in-game leader, but someone that is like that emotional leader to a large extent too. Is that, especially with some of the new players you have like Oxy, that felt to me when I saw him walk on stage with you for the first time, I'm like, the dynamics here are really cool because it looks like you're really embracing being the veteran that's kind of there to give him the comfort, and he can lean on you. And that seemed like a really cool dynamic between both of you.
That's definitely something I try to do, especially like the older I get, like the longer I play. Like helping people realize that it's not the end of the world if we have like a bad start, a bad loss. Like obviously in Valorant it is a lot more difficult because obviously we talked about like the limited matches, but I think it's something I tried to like help like Francis with a lot, and he's probably one of the best players I've ever played with. Like regarding that, like he's very good at dealing with pressure, at least so far. And it's like really impressive, to be honest. Like it's similar to Leaf. It doesn't feel like the pressure really gets to them, which is nice, I guess. But I do my best to help them like feel comfortable in whatever situation we're in.
It's awesome. I mean, it looks great. I mean, it's kind of interesting how it can be really hard to put it into words, but you can watch a team on stage and you can kind of get a sense for how resilient they're going to be and just whether they're going to win. You could probably, predict who's going to win pretty well off of just looking at the demeanors of the teams and the players. And
100%.
I definitely want to talk quite a lot about Cloud9. And I don't want to skip over a thread that we opened earlier. How did the whole Cloud9 thing happen again? How did you kind of come back into the roster? How did that opportunity happen?
Honestly, I have no clue. Like I just got a random
Fair enough.
Zelsis built a roster, then he got the offer from Sentinels, and then they're like, "Do you want to play?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Like I want to play." So I was trialing with Liquid prior, and I didn't end up getting that spot, which honestly, that's like the only time in my entire career where I've been like, I don't know if upset's the right word, but like, yeah, upset's probably the right word. Like where I didn't get a spot on a team. I think that the way that I am as a person fits really well with the Europeans. I think, like, even I only played with them 3 days, and it felt very, very natural, because I think that Europeans in general are a lot more open to just, like, blunt criticism, which is, like, kind of the way that I go about things. Instead of, like, beating around the bush, it's like, why are we doing this? Like, what can we do better? Versus, like, having to sugarcoat things. I think that's something that I struggle with, personally. I think that I'm very, like, straightforward, I guess. And I think that's something that a lot of Americans in general, obviously it is understandable why people are this way, but I think it's something that I struggle with personally at points. I've definitely gotten a lot better at it throughout my career, but it's definitely a work in progress. Still working on it, but I'm trying to get better.
Nice. Well, I mean, that would have been really interesting seeing with the Europeans, because that would
also
have
been awesome, dude.
Because you're just still sad about it.
Yeah, no, that would have been so fun. Like, it's supposed to be me, Martin, Safe, or me, Martin, Nats, and Yompi, and the fifth was we played with the guy on Vitality, Kicks, at one point, and then I played with Safe another day, and it just felt very like natural, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people, when they tend to go to different regions, they don't feel comfortable, but I was on 120 ping screaming at 3 a.m. and I felt just at home. So it was pretty disappointing, but everything happens for a reason. So I'm not like disappointed. I just wish I could have seen what could have happened, I guess.
How do your teammates feel about being the second choice?
I mean, they weren't a second choice. I didn't get offered by Liquid, so.
True. Okay. That's awesome though. And I totally understand what you mean in terms of the just like how it's different in Europe in terms of how like, I mean, not every like people from every country per se, but most. I'd say most though. Like most are pretty. I mean, at least that's how it was when I was there, for sure. Which I liked a lot. I liked playing I would play with the Swedish people a lot, but back then it was like that's because like the Swedes were like the best generally at FPS games, so I would always end up like trying to play with them. And I didn't play a lot with the Brits, I'll be honest.
Yeah. I think. I liked playing with Yompi and Nats a ton, simply because, and Safe as well. I think they're very, like, great players, obviously. Like, nobody needs to be told that. But I think the way that they like approach things is really good. Obviously, it was such a short time, so it's impossible to know. Like, maybe it's just like a honeymoon, whatever. Like, maybe that's not how they are all the time, but I feel like it's a lot more likely to be authentic when it's not your native tongue. Even if you are comfortable speaking it, I think it's a lot easier to like kind of tell how people are going to be when they're speaking in something they're not completely comfortable. Like with Americans, for example, like people can hide how they are for weeks, like a couple weeks. Like obviously it'll always come out eventually, but people can mask like how they are as a teammate long term in like trials or something, for example.
I see what you mean. Yeah, that's interesting too, because trials end up being like one of the most important things when like trying to like pick a new team, because you can't like, you need to like figure out what are the intangibles like, because I think everybody knows that's like probably the most important thing for any player, but by the name, like intangible, it's like you can't see that without testing it. So yeah, I could see how that would be really frustrating if like in that like very critical kind of judgment period, you've got people kind of like faking.
People are always going to play up in trials simply because like it's an opportunity, right? Like they're not going to have like bad days, and I think it's sometimes hard to judge, but I think for the most part it's not super difficult, at least for like the people I've worked with in the past. It's kind of like pretty straightforward, like do I think I'm going to someone or not, like work well with someone.
Well, I mean, it's all worked out really well, because it was great seeing you kind of back with the Cloud9 brand and like having like another crack at it, because also I felt straight away when I just saw the roster on paper, I felt like, wow, this, of all the Vanity rosters I've seen in Valorant, I feel like this one makes the most sense in terms of just a mixture of players and personalities. Like, is that how you felt immediately? Did it kind of click like pretty quick with you guys?
Yeah, things clicked pretty well, but I think we kind of did notice some things like instantly, like pretty early on, that we would need to improve at a lot to have a chance to compete against like the best teams in the world. And we worked on it for 3-4 months, and the levels of improvement we were looking for never really came to fruition. So we ended up going a different path, obviously, with Rooney and Moose, and I think that those two provide a lot for the team that people from the outside can't really see.
And with the obviously the recent win, it feels like you guys have done a lot right with regards to your training, because like the levels, like Leviathan are a team that I think a lot of people, it's hard to separate a lot of the teams because a lot of teams are pretty close, but I feel like a lot of people did put Leviathan in there, like top 2 even, potentially.
I think most people, I would feel like prior to their matches, top 4 was like the minimum you would see them place that. Obviously it's due to having players like Osboss, King, Mazzino, like adding Com as well, like even before Com, like NZR is a great player. And Tex, I think, is underrated. I think I'm not sure how he's adapting to Sentinel personally, but he played pretty decent in our match. I don't think he played great. I don't think he played horrible, but like on paper, they're a very good team, especially firepower-wise, as long as they could figure out like the calling structure within their team, because obviously switching from Spanish-speaking to English is going to be a hurdle they have to get over, and also switching all of their like language to English will definitely be something that is going to take time to work out.
And I mean, it seems like I feel like when watching them, it has felt like when teams are beating them, that it's not that they're playing bad. I feel like they're playing pretty damn good. And sort of what's supposed to happen, I feel like kind of happens, like how Aspas is playing, for example, and how he's in the team.
Dude.
Yeah, he's so good.
That guy is something else, man.
He's like amazing.
I've never played less in a match, but I think that guy, him and Alpha are probably the hardest 2 players I've ever played. Like, trying to kill them, pretty difficult. But I feel like Les would be pretty similar when I get the chance to play him.
Yeah, what team do you think is looking the best in the league right now?
Stan. I feel like you can't really say anything other than Stan. They just look really solid overall. I think it's always harder to maintain it than to get to the peak. But I think they have a good structure within their team to maintain it. So I think they're definitely like the #1 team in Americas right now.
Yeah.
Like by like a decent margin. Not like huge. Like it's not like it's unclosable, but I would say they're the best in America.
And do you feel like, obviously you guys are, kicking things off with a win, so, starting, and also like a pretty big win. Like Leviathan also in last year was also that like one of those teams where if you beat them, like that's a high quality win, because
it's
they're
like a
probably
litmus test, I guess. Yeah.
That's pretty huge. And I think you guys stand a really good chance with that win, especially. I think it's like a swing state in an election or whatever. I feel like they're like such a key win.
Yeah, I completely.
So with this roster, with the way things are clicking and everything, how do you feel about the trajectory of with the team at this point in terms of kind of meeting your expectations for the ceiling? Because I mean, it looks like the team does have a pretty big ceiling, to be honest. I think the question for me, like just looking from the outside, is will they find their way there in time?
Yeah, I mean that's always going to be the concern about obviously, like we keep tying back into the point, but it's like the scheduling. It's like I think we have a very good base and we need to continue to build on it. We've only been scrimming with Vanity and Moose for a month, I want to say, maybe a little over a month at this point. So we haven't had a ton of time to practice, but we've had enough time to get solid like bases on most maps. And then now it's just like building on top of those, like what we've done already.
And in terms of like the problem points, have you run into anything that feels like pretty tricky to deal with?
On this team, no, I don't think so. I think we all view the game in a very similar way. Obviously, you're gonna have disagreements, and those will happen. But I don't think anything negative so far. No, nothing that I've noticed.
What maybe this is the answer to this is something you haven't experienced, but maybe you have. Like, what do you think is like the worst thing that can like come up for a team in terms of like an internal issue? Like, what would you like think is this is the death knell like for the team? Like, if this starts happening.
I think it's when people start losing trust in each other. I think that's definitely like the nail in the coffin for most rosters. Even if it's like has it like slight hesitancy, it's probably the death of every team. Like if you don't like fully believe in each other, I think that's kind of when all teams tend to go downhill.
Do you feel like that can happen in a way that sort of like you can't stop it? Like let's say you're on a team and everything like it kind of looks like the chemistry's there and people are kind of just everyone's working, but that you can't win. Does that just the sort of like not winning in of itself erode trust over time passively?
100%, that can definitely have an impact on it, especially if you're like continuously losing in similar ways. Like you're losing rounds like that you shouldn't be losing, and that's why you're losing games. I think it can definitely lead to people losing faith in each other, which is just like the reality of anything like team reliant, right? Like even traditional sports is the same thing, I would imagine.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, flipping that on its head. So we talked about like the worst thing that could be the death knell of the team. And what's like the opposite? What's the thing that you see in a team? You're like, this is maybe it's an uncommon thing, but if you see it in a team, that's like what everyone aspires to get or have.
I mean, I would say Fnatic last year and Sen this year so far have shown like the thing that like they look so cohesive as a team and they kind of always know what each other wants to do. And you can't really tell from the outside, even watching comms videos, like they just look like they're on the same page at all times, whether that's communication related or they just know how each other like likes to play. It's kind of like me, Leaf, and Zeppa had that dynamic, and Mitch as well in the past, even with Zeta obviously, but it's a little shorter term. But me, Mitch, Zeta or Zeppa and Leaf like pretty much knew exactly what all of us were thinking at any point given to like our tenure together. And I think that's like the main thing is like how comfortable do people look in like uncomfortable situations, because sometimes communication is gonna like have faults, and the more you can rely on like just knowing each other is a very like strong thing to have.
It's interesting because I think that's also what made EG win the championship, is that they hit
100%,
that level
that's another team
of cohesiveness. Yeah. It's super consistent with like an experience that I had in like 2006 when I was playing on like a Pro Quake 14, and we were there's only like one team in the world that could beat us for like a 6 months plus period, so we were just beating everybody. And I remember that exact feeling of like cohesiveness where I knew what every single one of my teammates was going to do, almost like they're an extension of myself. It was like a weird feeling. It's I don't know what really creates that exactly.
It's hard to describe it, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a cool feeling to have. It's a really cool feeling to have because it probably means you're owning people.
Yeah, it's incredible. When you hit that state, it's very few things I feel like can match it.
There must be a bunch of like a series of things that has to happen to like create a world where then that thing can happen as well.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like, pretty much any team that wins like a champions level event has to basically get to that point. That's very likely exactly what their team is experiencing, because the level of competition is so hard. And I guess like in those moments, maybe it's the level of like the stage, the pressure that comes in that allows you to perform like that. But I don't know. It's I hope someone can figure this out. I'm gonna have to
If
think
someone
more
can
about
figure
this.
it out, they're gonna win everything in every sport, every game. Don't
Yeah.
matter.
You know, I mean, there's that book. I don't know if I'm sure we probably talked about it, but like it's like my Bible for like team sports, like Legacy by James Kerr. I think that's
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
what. Yeah, I think that's like the closest formula I could see to like what that must be if someone
Yeah.
was to like create some kind of a guide for it.
I think
Yeah.
there's another book, The Sport Takes Care of Itself by
Oh,
is it Bill Walsh, I think. It was the 49ers coach. Something like that. It's like similar, very similar in like the concept. Like he believed in building a really solid foundation and then you slowly get better over time and then things like just like start clicking, right? And I
yeah,
think that's kind of like the way that you should look at it because I don't think getting instantaneous results is very difficult in any competitive environment. And I think you shouldn't. It's obviously difficult to like look at the big picture and like the long term, but I think that's kind of the best way to look at it. Like even the last year, it's like a good example. It's like they believed in each other so much, they stayed together, and they ended up winning champs. This is kind of similar with pretty much any team that has like that level of success in any competitive esport, any like team sport, like whatever you want to call it. I think that's definitely the biggest thing that people overlook. They kind of just want instant results, and I think it's hard to get that, if not impossible. Especially in a game like Valorant, I think it's impossible. Maybe in CS you can like get lucky, like win some random event, you know. But I think for the most part, it's pretty difficult.
yeah. I think this is actually this is another reason, I guess, why not having those like that like really expansive circuit of third party tournaments for tier 2 and stuff is kind of unfortunate in this game because I think like we've kind of described, you get that boost from winning, and you're gonna get like those teams that I should I'm gonna have in the title podcast with Vanity and Zephyr.
Yeah, Doxy now, don't worry.
And Noxy. But oh shit, what was I saying? Fuck, it's gone. It's gone. It's fine. I've got to move on. It's probably uninteresting. That's how I'm going to cope. That's my cope. Right. So getting back on track. It's really interesting watching the game right now because, like you're saying, it feels like consistency in this game for the top level. It's got so much. It's like so hard. Like just the game itself makes it hard, and then the whole like lack of tournaments makes it hard too because you don't get enough reps. So it is like, what is it with Valorant? Is it always going to be like this? Do you think, or is it just that once the game matures and teams are able to be more flexible because more experience on all the players, it's going to allow them to basically be more consistent? Or is it just because of the way that agents have different lineups for every team that you can't possibly prepare for?
I've talked to Steele about this a lot, and I think it's kind of just the nature of the game. It's very chaotic in like how the game is designed. Whether that's like agent or map design, the game is just like very chaotic by design, right? Like you can win an eco round with like, say you're in like 4 classics and jet knives. That obviously will cause more inconsistency in the game itself because you should be losing this round 9 out of 10 times, but you have a superpower that gives you like the best gun in the game.
Yeah.
Even then, it's like I think the map design in general is very straightforward, and every piece of like maps are designed in a way, from my point of view, that abilities have to get value, and there's not much like room to play on a lot of bomb sites. So I think that alone is going to cause a lot of variance within itself. The game is chaotic, so it's like the teams that are best at dealing with chaos are going to be the best at the time, and I think that's something that I don't think is ever going to change with the design of the game. Possible, but I think it's kind of similar to how Riot handles League, right? Like the game is always changing, things are always like different, and I think that's probably like the design they like the most because it does keep things very interesting for the viewers.
Yeah, my solution for this was actually just the agent draft, because if you have an agent draft, then in theory, no one
There's a
can
little
come in
less-
super prepped on like comps you've never seen before. Yeah, so I think and
Oh
it means,
yeah, like you're talking like unique agents per team, I think.
oh, you mean
or you
in
talk-
terms of the agent draft? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so you could.
Yeah, I think that would be the only way that. Even then, it's really difficult, but I would say that would probably create a lot more high-level consistency. But even then, it's hard to like figure
Yeah.
out, I guess.
I'm curious because this is one of those problems where it's it kind of feels impossible almost. I think most people probably would feel like that if they're being kind of rational about it. And at the same time, it presents, oh, you think it's impossible? Well, who is going to be the first to figure it out type of thing. Like it's more motivation to do that. So I'm curious if someone's going to figure it out, because it's got to be possible. There's going to be at some point.
Definitely possible, but I think it's very difficult to do. I mean, Fnatic was close last year, and really the only team that could ever beat them is Loud. I don't think they had.
Yeah.
Did they lose to anyone other than Loud the entire year?
No, I don't think so.
I think they lost to Liquid in the European finals, but other than that, I think Loud that beat them in tournaments.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a lot like stylistic at a certain point. But I think it's kind of just the nature of the game. Maybe the longer it's out, the more people will be capable of like solving it. But it's also attack FPS, and I think it's very hard to solve attack FPS games in general.
Yeah, for sure. And with new agents coming in and patches that have quite
like
significant
random agents will become broken, they'll become nerfed, maps will get changed, like things like that. It's very difficult. But I think it's possible. I just think it's very hard, and I don't know if it's going to happen for a long time, to be honest.
Yeah, dude. Last year, Riot they took away ice blocks mid-season. That happened.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that before, and that kind of fucked us up because that was like one of our best maps, and we were struggling, already. And it's like, oh Christ, they've removed one of our best maps. Who's paid them off? Sentinels have paid them off.
They definitely lean into the constant adaptations, I guess, is like the style that Riot likes in their pro circuit, which is understandable because it does keep like fans more invested if things are constantly changing, because it's not like if the map pool never changes and agents don't get added, then there will probably be like potential for a team to just like figure out the game per se.
Yeah.
But I think the nature of the design leads into a lot of parity, and I think it's something that's very good for the viewership in general, because if like any team can win an event, then that's going to pull more viewers, in my opinion, I think. Because I think it's a lot less interesting to watch when teams are like that much better than others. Like I think from a competitive point of view, it's really awesome to see, but I think from a fan point of view, it's really cool to have tournaments where like anybody can win.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. And I do think that, to be honest, Valorant's really fun to watch. I think competitive Valorant is super enjoyable because there's always something that every single round there's always a way to win. It doesn't matter what's going on, there's always a way to win, and that's really fun. And then all the util, because that's I think something with CS that's kind of hard for I think to make it as engaging in a way, is that with Valorant it's like the story kind of tells itself, because all the util that's relevant in a given round is like really easy to see and to call out, and it's very easy to see even in the chaos what is the important stuff that everything's pivoting off of. Whereas in CS you can't really, as a spectator, see as much the key pop flashes and like these
like
types
a flash
of things.
that just instantly wins you around. Like it's pretty difficult. I think CS is a lot easier to digest as a non-player of the game, but I think if you play if you play Valorant, I think Valorant is. People always say it's really hard to watch. Maybe it's because I play the game, but even when I didn't play, obviously teams weren't using abilities nearly as much, but it never feels like super hard to watch. Like it's never felt like Overwatch to me, right? Like Overwatch made no sense to me when I was watching it, and I was like relatively high elo, like in the beginning of the game. Obviously the game evolved a lot, but it always felt like there was so much like random things that you can't really notice. And in Valorant, I don't think it's nearly as confusing. Obviously, I play the game a lot, so I'm going to understand it like a fair amount, but I feel like it's still like pretty straightforward, like what you were saying. Like you can kind of see the like pivot points in rounds very well.
Yeah. You see, like if there's a Viper's Pit, even if there's some shock darts and a smoke and like something else, like you still kind of know like what's going. I don't know. I feel like it's again maybe I have the same problem as you. So
no, 100%. It's like I mean the only like example I have is my girlfriend's parents.
Okay, nice.
Watch like all of my CS games because the game is just like straightforward, right? It's like okay, you plant the bomb, or you kill them all, or you defuse the bomb. It's very easy to understand.
Yes.
It's not like a bunch of like abilities, like random, like harbor wall, like harbor ult. Like it's just easy to digest. But I don't think Valorant is hard to understand as people make it out to be. But it's also hard for us to say that, right? Because we've spent so much time like watching and playing the game that obviously we're going to think that it's not that hard. But even then, I don't know. It's an FPS game at the end of the day. You need to shoot them in the head before they shoot you in the head. So it's still like I don't know. It doesn't feel that hard to watch, even from like a casual POV. But I think CS is definitely easier for like people that don't play video games because there's just like you can enjoy Counter-Strike without playing video games, and I think Valorant is maybe the other way. Like I feel like you kind of have to play the game to enjoy it
Yeah.
a lot. Similar to League. Like I feel like if you never watch League, you're never gonna like watching it. And I think CS is like has the novelty of like being very, very like simple and like digestible by the general public, which
Yeah.
I think is something that a lot of games struggle with.
I think it has some other advantages too that I like, which is one, this is all actually kind of related to the commentary to it at a certain extent, but the game has more bigger periods of tension, and like
100%.
and then if you've got like really good commentators too, which obviously the CS talent is amazing, they're really good at using that tension in space to like really build you into a moment. But Valorant, I think, it's like big moment, big moment, big moment, big moment. It's like super intense.
I think there's something I personally don't like a lot of Valorant casters, just because I think they're very bad at just building the moment, right? I think Valorant casters always try to make everything in a round seem like it's the most important thing ever, and it kind of kills my enjoyment for like listening to a lot of casters, to be honest. Like the only two, like the duo that I can like actually listen to consistently is Pansy and Hypoc. I think they're heads and shoulders above the others, like personally. I think they do a very good job at like a level analysis and then building up like the big moments to be like the big moment, where I think a lot of other commentators lean into making every moment seem like it's like monumental, when in the bigger picture it's not that monumental.
Yeah, I think Valorant, I think, is a really hard game to cast. Well, because
Oh yeah, 100%.
you have to.
I don't think it's easy.
Yeah, no, I think it's, for me, I'm like, oh, I love it. I'm very sad that I'm not able to cast it, but I love casting it because it's like you have to be, you have very little economy of words to use, because again, there's like so many big things happening, and in CS you get loads of space to
There's
fit
a lot
in
of
some
downtime,
banter
like,
and
where you can-
personality
yeah,
and
100%.
all that kind of stuff. But Valorant, man, if you want to like keep that
You can't joke
strategic
around.
and tactical thread going through every round, but then also like find what is the most like important plays in the early round and the mid round, and to set all these different things up, it's actually really hard to. I feel like you need to understand the game very, very well, because you got to see stuff ahead of time to set it up, because you got to understand what all the stuff to not talk about, which is, I think that's the hard thing of Valorant, is like the stuff to not talk about.
Yeah, I completely agree.
tough.
I think it's very difficult to cast. I think Brennan's Sideshow do the best job at explaining the game and hyping up moments to like more casual fans, I guess. And I think I personally like Hypoc because I think they do a good job at like making it enjoyable to watch from like a high level point of view. But I think Brennan's Sideshow are probably the best at making the game digestible for anybody.
Do you watch any other esports?
I watch everything, bro. It's like literally everything.
Oh, sick.
I
Because I was
watch
gonna ask you.
CS, Halo, COD.
Oh, cool. Okay, so who are your favorite? We'll go CS first. Who are your favorite casters in CS? Like who speaks to you?
Either Launders and Scrawny or Harry and Hugo, probably.
Yeah.
I like Moses and Anders a lot as well, but I don't know if they don't do as much as they used to. But honestly, like all the CS talent is really, really incredible. But I would say my personal favorites are definitely Launders and Scrawny and Harry and Hugo. Could be because we came up in CS at like the same time, so maybe there's some bias there. But
yeah.
I think they do a very good job at describing things and making it like easy to like enjoy.
Nice. Dude, I must have casted a lot of your matches, right? At some point, because
In ECS, 100%.
Yeah, because we did loads of NA games. For a couple of years.
I didn't like your partner. He was annoying.
Oh shit.
Well, okay. To be fair, I don't think he's a bad caster, but I never liked how much. His name is James Bardolph, right?
Yeah.
It always felt like he downplayed the underdog. Like they should have zero chance to win games, and that really annoys me. Like even in Valorant, it pisses me off. It's like, no, this team just played good, bro. Like the other team didn't play like complete shit. Like the other team is just good, and I think that's something that's always annoyed me. It's in any game, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But
it sounds like there was like one specific moment where this happened, and you're like, it like sent you, and it's like burned into your long-term memory.
Oh, no, it is. Trust me. We smashed Energy, bro, on like in ECS. We like smashed them like 2 maps in a row, and he's like, oh yeah, Energy just looked horrible today. And it's like, bro, we just embarrassed them. Like, yeah, maybe
Yeah,
they didn't
yeah.
play great, but like we just demolished them. Like if they're like a top 5 team in the world, maybe give us like a little bit of credit, like maybe not a lot, whatever. Like maybe they did just have a horrible day, but
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of taking away credit from teams, players, in like just because it kind of feels like you're just shitting on them, I guess. Like, oh, they shouldn't be at this level. It's like, what?
Yeah, I do agree with you because the winning is the whole point, and that should always be celebrated. That
Yeah.
should always be celebrated, and that's the realist shit. That's like the realist shit because it's like what actually matters is if you won or not. Like that's the whole point of all of this. We can have all of our
Yeah,
narratives
100%.
and we can have all this like shit around the game, but like it's the meritocracy of the game. Also, CS back then, especially because MR15 still like, dude.
Yeah, like you couldn't beat a team by accident in
No,
MR15.
not really.
Like, no, very, very rarely, if ever.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that just annoys me in general about even fans are really bad about it. It's like the team, like they played insanely well. Like even if the other team didn't play up to their standards, that doesn't mean you need to discredit the other team.
Yeah. To be honest as well, like, you know, as a competitor as well, there's this thing where like there's this idea of like playing to the level of your opponent that kind of I think naturally happens, and it's a
100%.
consequence of teams that aren't disciplined. Honestly, that's like really the cause of it.
100%.
And teams should get punished for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think
Yeah.
it's something that's never really brought up because it's like such a like weird concept, right? Like
Yeah.
you play up and down to the level of your team. I think it's like it's I guess it's not that weird to understand, but it's very common, especially in sports. I would imagine it's very similar in like traditional sports as well. Like teams just play up and down to who they're playing. Like if it's in my opinion, it's easier to play good teams because you can kind of understand their thought process a lot. But when you're playing lower level teams, it's very hard to predict or like understand what they're doing because maybe their game philosophy is different. Maybe they view the game in a different way. But the teams at the very top, like there's kind of like a formula, I guess, like how they're going to do things and why they're going to do things, and it causes the games to be a lot more enjoyable, I guess, to play because like it feels like you control like your fate versus like there's like teams that are just like very random to play. Like
Yeah.
Furia in CS is a great example, right? Like 2019, 2020, they just ran at you, bro. They didn't care. They just ran at you, and it caused a lot of chaos, and it definitely caused them to play up and down to the level of their opponent.
Yeah. You got to have like fundamentals, and you can't really have like fundamentals without discipline. I mean, you can, but the
Very,
problem
very
is,
hard, very hard.
Yeah, you can't like because I always say that the difference between like the best teams and the teams that are below the best teams is that the best teams have you have to make the assumption their fundamentals are perfect. So if there is an advantage, they're going to play it perfectly. And so similarly, like if they're executing their strategy and they play it, they're going to get an advantage over you, and then they're going to play
Everything
it
is accounted
and
for.
beat you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's the teams that's what makes the best teams, and everyone below them is the teams that don't have fundamentals good enough and consistent enough to be in that class. And so then the difference of the actual matches is that to win at that level, you have to be really disruptive, and that is like the most fun shit to watch is when you get the best
Oh yeah,
teams
so
because they
it's
have
very
to be
enjoyable to watch.
super disruptive.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun just thinking. Honestly, it just excites me because that's why I love commentary. Dude, that's why I
100%.
love commentary
Like
vanities because
Paper X, it's so fun to watch.
it's like the best thing. It's like you got these two teams that are like the best in the world at this thing that's like extremely competitive. How do they beat each other? Like it's so interesting. I don't know. Okay, so kind of getting carried away a little bit with that one, but I think it's really interesting to kind of think about some of these dynamics that impact teams because I think, like you said, you know, people on the outside they don't have the insight as to what's going on inside the teams, so they have to make they like make up reasons. It's you know,
Yeah.
you know, it's you got to make up something has to explain it away.
There has to be a reason.
Yeah.
100%.
And then people will also pick the thing that explains it away that also fits the narrative that they want to believe in as well. So that's another part of it too.
Oh, yeah. The narratives in Valorant are something else, bro.
Like, what's your
People
favorite?
dude, people make Steel out to be like the worst player in IGL of all time. It makes zero sense to me.
Crazy.
It's like obviously like I'm biased because I'm his friend, but it's like you look at his career from like an outside point of view. He was on one bad team ever. Like even that T1 team that like the fucking help sewers shit, right? They were a very good team, and like everyone would say that, but then they lose that match, and then like their confidence fucked. It ties back into what we were talking about earlier. It's like they lose that match, they get fucked over, and it like fucks with their team, like the mindset, I guess. things like that. Like every team he's been on has been good. I mean, there's a lot of like it's typically related to IGLs, I would say, or like star players. Like obviously like people that are not as in the spotlight, and I think IGLs and star players tend to be the most publicly like criticized or like talked about, which is understandable.
Yeah.
Like EA is another great example. Like people make this guy out like he's horrible now. It's like I think it's just very confusing. Like you don't go from the best player in the world to a horrible player. I think it's a lot of like team environment things that cause him to not play at his potential, and I think it's very hard to cultivate something like that without like strong leadership within your teams.
Yeah, it really is like interesting how these narratives do come out, because again, like if you don't have the information but you really want to explain it, yeah, you just got to guess. I used to use like an analogy for this, which is like, you know, there's like dot to dot drawings where you have to go from dot to dot. Yeah, I used to use this as like an analogy for how people don't often have enough information on things, and obviously you can get really granular and you can start with 10 dots. So if you have 100, you got a much more accurate picture of what the thing actually is.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the 100, you have to skip over, you know, what the thing might actually be. And so I feel like that's what happens in all these cases, is that people don't have information, they just make stuff up and then they fight over it. It's like,
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, even like in CS, right? Like I see people like flame Kerrigan. It's like, how do you talk shit to that guy?
No way.
Like, how do you call Kerrigan a bad player? It's
Dude,
like
so
mind blowing. It like in general, it's like very confusing. The narratives people like create just to like shit on people.
Yeah.
It's just like it's confusing. Like there's no other word to like describe it.
Dude, I also remember, speaking of Kerrigan, I don't know which year this would have been. It's kind of hard at this point sometimes to pin it down, but I think around like, I'm going to guess around like 2016, 2017 or something. Like there were people that was like when Kerrigan kind of like left the sort of Astralis like cluster of players, which at the time would have been like, what? God, I don't like Dignitas, then into Astralis, I think. Whatever, like, you know, the device, you know, Zipex, Duprecore was doing, because he was playing with them, and people was then saying like after he like left that grouping of players that he was like washed as a player. And it's funny because people thought that because I think he'd been around for a while, he played at the top teams, and now he wasn't doing so well. He's played in 1.6, so he's really old school anyway, so he's probably on the way out. But like, look at the motherfucker now. Like,
and then he goes and wins like 10 trophies with FaZe.
Yeah.
Then goes to Mouse, wins like 4 more. Then goes back to FaZe and wins another like 10 trophies. It's like, I think people are very quick to dismiss players. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's a good way to word it. It's like they're very like dismissive because I think it ties back into jealousy, right? Like these people are doing something that they wish they could do, and it causes a lot of like resentment within themselves.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think that's definitely I think like things like that are definitely big drivers of like that kind of behavior for sure. Just and then some people have that sort of like because there's two ways you can go with it. You can either be inspired and want to be like, oh wow, I want to try to do the thing that guy did because I want that outcome, or you're like, I want to destroy, you know, like I want to like tear the guy down type of thing.
Yeah,
there's the two ways. It's your two options. There's the two options.
Yeah.
You have. So it kind of sucks that people want to destroy and tear people down. Kind of sucks.
That's how the world is nowadays, I guess.
Yeah. And you know, another thing as well, it's like with players, and I feel like there's all these situations where players get like judged as an individual at like the worst possible times, and judged as a team at like maybe the worst possible times too.
Yeah.
What do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's just confusing. I don't know. There's no other word to describe it, I guess. It's just mind-boggling.
But
I think in
esports,
it's also very much different than a lot of like other fields, because you are so like you kind of have to be connected to the community. In traditional sports, you don't really need to ever interact with the public.
Yeah.
But in esports, you kind of like pretty much required to do the job. Obviously, you can do like little amounts, but it's very rare that's a thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like the stage thing we're talking about, how it's this weird drama that kind of plays out, and it really is like It's kind of weird because even though you guys are like essentially kind of the actors in this environment, you don't have any control over the script or the story or anything, which I suppose is normal for the actors. But it's just like it doesn't matter like the stuff that you do in some cases. It can just be interpreted completely in the wrong light, and you have no control over it. It is very odd. It is very odd.
Yeah, I think that's probably like the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's funny because with other sports too, I guess because we're in this I guess like we're esports, and so lots of it's very popular amongst like young people who are like the most like tech savvy as well, and sort of the most on social media as well. And that's like more and more, I think, what we're all growing up on. Because when I look at some other sports and the people in the other sports, like F1, for example, you got like Drive to Survive and all the like media stuff that they do anyway. But I feel like there's still like quite a lot of separation between who they are and then sort of like, what they do off camera. But I feel like with
100%.
esports and it feels like it's kind of meshed into like you're an esports player, but also in some sense it's kind of an influencer just as well. And then what does that mean? And it all gets really weird.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I feel like you kind of have to try to do both to like prolong your career, I guess. And I think that kind of ties into like being interconnected to your community. Traditional sports, you don't necessarily need to be good. Like you could go your entire career with never interacting with press or any like public people and probably be like just fine. But in esports, you don't make nearly the same like level of money. So you kind of need to have like a bridge out, unless you're like a tens or something, for example. But there's only one tens, bro. Like there's only one tens.
So do you have a sense of what you would do with your, like, do you want to stay in, if you're no longer a player, do you want to stay involved and be a coach, or do you want to be behind the scenes, or do you want to just get out of esports?
I don't know. I have no clue. I don't think I would want to coach. I would be interested in like the analyst desk. I've been doing it like here and there for Riot, and I enjoy it a lot. But I don't think about that too much. I just live, I just do what I think is best at the moment. Yeah, I think it's the best way to live. Like
Nice.
I'm comfortable like financially. Like I know that I have a lot of like to fall back on. Like even if I never made another dollar from esports, like I could still go to school, like pay for myself to live and pursue something. But I would like to be in esports for a bit longer, playing or analyzing whatever it may be. Long term, I don't know if it'll be normal for like a 40-year-old man to be on an esports desk, so maybe we need to get something else out there. But yeah, I want to be in it for a bit longer, for sure.
Nice. Like earlier you said how how all-consuming this can all be, and you're like, I understand this, so I kind of make sure to have some kind like other things in my life going on and so on. What else do you have kind of going on in terms of like either your interests or other things that you take up your time?
I don't really like. I just play a lot of video games. It's not necessarily like I just kind of disconnect from the fact that I have value as a human apart from a Valorant player, and I know that if I put like my my work ethic towards like any field, I will be able to find success. So it kind of makes it a lot easier to deal with like the stress of being a pro. Like I know if I have to go back to school, like I'll be okay. Like I guess that's the best way to put it. I know I'll be okay even if esports died tomorrow. Like
Nice.
I'm not
Okay.
completely tied into like esports being my whole being. It's like I know that I have things that I've learned from my career in esports that will help me succeed in other areas of life.
Awesome. Yeah, well, that sounds great. I'm glad to hear all of that. That's definitely good to
I
know
think it's
that you've got a
something
plan.
a lot of people struggle with is they tie everything into being like a pro, which is understandable because it does take up all your time. You don't have a ton of time for other things, but I think people need to be more okay with like realizing there's a lot of like things you learn being a professional that tie into other aspects of life, even if it's not directly.
Yeah.
Like to become an esports player, you have to have a good work ethic. It's like I guess there's probably some examples of people that don't, but for the most part, like you have to have a really good work ethic, and that can apply to any field if you like really like put your mind to it and realize it's what you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I know that you've been like you're in and out of the gym as well, right? I know you spend some time kind of.
I go to the gym. Yeah, that's like the only consistent hobby I have, I guess. Gym, video games. That's about it, actually. I don't really do much
Yeah.
else. I'm
Sounds
pretty.
like a similar story for me.
I hang out with my cats, go some places with my girlfriend, but I'm pretty. I don't know. I'm not very like. I'm not like super social, but I'm not like super antisocial. I'm like in the middle. I like it sometimes, but I
Yeah.
like to be by myself a lot. And just like doing my own thing. But yeah.
Kind of like a social chameleon. You can kind of match the
Yeah, like
energy.
I can do
Yeah.
it whenever I need to, but it's not like my preferred thing, I guess.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, I know you're someone that, you've already mentioned, like, you look to try to find ways to solve the problems that you have as a player as you're developing and so on. And I'm curious, like, I've obviously my YouTube channel became basically aim training stuff for some reason the last
I've seen
like
it.
while. And so I'm curious, because it is actually it's picking up a bit now that I think there is a more kind of formalized version of coaching that people actually feel like they're getting great results from, and because it's quite a new thing. Are you anywhere on this topic? Do you care about it? Do you not care about it? Where are you on this
I'm indifferent.
aim world?
I think it's like, I don't know the best way to like describe it. It can help, but I don't think it's going to make a good player into a great player.
Mm-hmm.
I think it helps people's mechanics, but I don't think being a pro is that mechanically demanding for the most part. Like obviously, like it doesn't matter how many hours I spend in aim labs, I'll never be able to aim like Oxy. It doesn't matter. I could spend the next 10,000 hours of my life. I'll never be able to do the things he does. But like I think I do Kovacs a bit, not a ton. Like I don't have a coach. I play his playlist, and I think it definitely helps me a little bit, but I don't think it's like a completely necessary thing, but I don't think it hurts at all.
It's actually a super interesting point, because I actually think you highlighted what can end up being a pretty big leak, actually, which is sort of like misdiagnosing where you're failing. Because I've experienced this personally, and I know I've seen other players do it too, where you will, like, let's say you're struggling to get results, you're not playing to your standard, and you'll be like, you'll probably pick the thing that's comfortable to do that helps you feel like you're working on the problem. So that could be just playing more. I know a lot of people that did that when it's like,
that's definitely the biggest like trap people fall into, I guess.
yeah.
I think that people always think that, okay, I'm not playing well, that means I need to play 3 times as much. And I think for a lot of people it's quite the opposite. Not everyone's the same though. Everyone's different, obviously. Like a good example, he's never played the game a ton, but he's always been one of the better mechanical players in America. And I think he also has a very good understanding of the game. And I think some of that ties into he doesn't brainlessly play the game a lot. When he is playing, he's like actively engaged. And I think that's something that a lot of people have a misconception of. Obviously, playing the game can't hurt, but overplaying definitely can, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I think that when you overplay, you can go into like a state. Like I think I had an example of this in 2022 on Cloud9. I was streaming 4 to 6 hours on top of practice every day, and we were practicing 7 hours. So I was playing Valorant 14 hours a day. You kind of just go into like brain fog. It's like you're just like going through the motions constantly. And it's something I kind of realized I need to like take a step back and not play as much, because it's making me perform worse as an IGL. Maybe for other players it doesn't matter. Like if you're a duelist, maybe it doesn't make a difference. But I definitely noticed that the more that I was like spam queuing ranked and stuff, it definitely made me feel not as mentally like clear.
Yeah, that's totally. So it's funny that you're talking about this, because I've made a video today and released one a couple days ago where I've just been sort of hammering people about like intentional practice, having intentional focuses when they practice, because of exactly kind of what you're describing, and just the fact that if you do grind for that period of time, you're forced to go into autopilot mode, because your brain just doesn't have enough energy to be actively
100%.
focusing on anything. So you're not really able to be in a learning mode. So you're just going to repeat the same stuff that you're already doing. And what's worse, I feel like, is that you'll repeat stuff and you won't even have enough energy to notice what's wrong as much. So like
No,
you don't
100%.
even know what's going on, I feel like.
I think that's like a big like trap a lot of people fall into.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard, because like if you're performing not to your standard, then obviously you think that you probably need to put in more hours when.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important to note that it's very interdependent. Everyone is different. People are going to get at their best from different ways. and I think copying other people is not the worst thing to do, but I think you need to realize that like you are your own person. Like what Leaf does, what Tens does, what like Durka does, like might not work for you. You can take things from them and try them, but if you're like noticing that it's not benefiting you a ton, then you should like expand like what you're doing and try to figure out other ways to improve yourself.
Yeah, and I mean that's the plight, that's the difficulty for sure. Like figuring out like what to do, because the lazy thing is like, oh, just play more, but it's not the answer. And that's kind of like what I'm trying to also help people to understand a little bit more, that because everything that I advise people is usually like you're playing maybe for like 4 hours or something like that, because I think that's like a minimum effective dose, where if you're super intentional, you can do 4 hours with like maximum effort, essentially, guaranteed. Because I used to find problems that I didn't notice quickly enough when I was getting tired, and then I had to like learn how to understand when I was tired, because I was playing so much all the time that I was always tired anyway. Like so how do I know when I have good focus or not good focus? And so I had to like figure out, okay, I know that I don't have good focus if I like do something and it's like and make a mistake and it's something that I know that I already fixed. That's a sign that I'm too tired. Or
100%.
if it's like I'm lacking patience, that's a big one. If I'm lacking patience, then it usually means I either don't want to be in a game right now, or I'm too tired and I'm just trying to force action. And so like there's like various things I started to pick up and I'm like, okay, this is time to stop, because I know my quality of reps are gonna be worse now. So
Yeah,
it's
I
tricky.
completely agree with that. But I also, yeah, it's like important. It's like it's very hard. It's not like there's like a formula that's gonna make you the same level as these players. And you need to constantly like be working to figure out what works the best. And it's also going to change. I think that's something that people are also not the best at realizing, is like what you need in year 1 of your pro career probably isn't going to be what you need in year 3, year 4, 5. Like there's very good chance that things are going to change in like your performance, play style, like all of that, like that are just like completely different, and you like try to like keep learning like how to adapt to what's perform the best.
Do you have like any approaches that you use to kind of do that more theoretical and analytical part of the game, whether it's just like do VOD review yourself or other players? How do you kind of approach kind of teasing out these things?
I like watching other players more so than myself, because I think that I'm very hypercritical of myself when I play. So I still do watch myself from time to time, but I think I'm very hypercritical of like what I'm doing, and like when I do something like really stupid, it's like, why did I do that? You know, I think a lot of pros are similar, and I think that I learn more watching other players than I do watching myself back. I think early in your career though, it's very beneficial to watch yourself, because I think you'll pick up on a lot of things very easily. But I think the more you do it, the more you'll like start to like be able to do it in game and like in route, like in mid scrim, mid match, whatever. Like, okay, I shouldn't be doing this. And I need to remember like how to play like my other game.
It's funny, man, because like you mentioning like the mistakes you spot and sometimes how it's like kind of painful to see those.
Oh yeah,
it does. I was thinking about it too, and it's like it reminds me of that same kind of, for me, I experience it like as a little bit of shame, kind of like when there's like I created an awkward moment socially, and I just like feel a bit of that pang of shame, you know? Like,
yeah, I completely agree.
Man. No things. So bringing it back into like the current state of the game a little bit and sort of the pro scene, I'm curious like who you think is a player that's really been slept on, because I feel like it's impossible to pull up all the talent to where they should be, because there's loads of players I feel like that could play tier 1.
Loud.
And that's not good. It's not coming through that badly actually.
Yeah, I turned it. Can you repeat your?
Oh yeah. So I was just saying that I feel like this, because of the way the system works, there's so many players that if the system was different could be playing in tier 1. So I'm curious like who you think, like who are the most like criminally underpicked players for the tier 1 league at the moment.
You're gonna like my answer.
Okay.
I think Will is one.
Nice, dude. I was thinking Will, but I was like, I'm not gonna.
I think if Will didn't have to play on 70 ping, constantly, I think he could be a very good player. But I think his like, just like where he lives, it's just fucked. Like it doesn't matter his internet. It's just like he's so far from everything. I don't know if he would be like a top tier 1 level player, but I definitely think he's capable of competing if he was given like the right circumstances. I mean, you guys saw how well he played like at champs, right? Like he was unbelievable when he was put in an environment where he's like in an even playing field.
He had the worst start to it. Like his start to the year too. It's like he was it was like horrendous. It was horrendous. You turned it around, man. You're right. I do love that answer. I'm like the biggest fanboy.
There's a lot though. I definitely think there's a ton of players in tier. I think Vic on Moistic Shopify is that guy does things I don't under. It's similar to Oxy. Like I watched them and it's like I don't know how your hand just did that. But I think he's like an obvious answer. I think a lot of people, someone like him.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, there's a ton of people that are definitely capable of competing in tier 1. It's just getting like the right opportunity because I think something that not everyone is going to work on every team. Like I think like having the right group around you and like system around you is very important.
Okay, well, who doesn't belong tier 1? No, just kidding. You don't have to
Who
answer that. You don't have to throw shade. But I feel like it'd be funny to ask the question.
He retired.
Okay.
Rhyme.
Nice. I try to be like really nice, you know, like because honestly, I can't. I'm like terrible at trolling people.
To be fair, I don't think Rhyme was that bad, but I don't think he was great. He definitely he was a lot better in Europe than he was in America. I think when he was in America, he wasn't that great. That could be team environment, whatever it was. But I think when he went back to Europe and played on Giants, he was actually a lot better than he was in America.
Well, it's crazy. The level of talent in this it's so tragic. The level of talent in this game, especially in NA, it's like unprecedented.
I think it's
unprecedented.
I think America is the most talented region by far. Like depth-wise, like great players. I think it's I don't even think it's close, to be honest.
I
think that's also because Europe still has Counter-Strike to play. Like
that's a good point,
like
actually.
A Counter-Strike scene. And Asia in general has never been great at TAC FPS games. Like even in CS, I think they still play Crossfire in China and stuff. I think it's still a really big game over there.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think they just don't have the same like necessity to play because in America, like it doesn't make sense for most people to play CS because there's not a ton of opportunity. And Valorant, there is not as much opportunity as before, but there's still a good amount of opportunity to like prove yourself. Yeah, I think America's like depth-wise, I don't even think it's close.
It's
crazy. I've been saying this
too.
for years.
For those of you that don't know, that maybe you're just getting into esports with Valorant. Like for last 20 years, America has had very few like really like amazing players. Like it's never been the region that has had the biggest pool of players that were amazing. The US always had really like weird. 1 or 2 like super good teams that would be able to like compete at the championship, but really other than that it was honestly very dry for a long time. And as we could get into some of the reasons as to why, but the thing is that was the status quo forever, much like it was the status quo that Sweden was just unbeatable in terms of the level of talent and teams that would produce, and that's been turned on its head in the last
a couple of years for sure.
Few years, yeah. It's quite sad actually. It's quite sad. They've fallen far. The hubris, maybe.
Now Denmark took over and Russia.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. Denmark is super interesting, man. Like it's like almost like a fucking Counter-Strike social experiment.
It's actually crazy.
Yeah, it's what like 4.5 million people or something. Was the population or something? That can't be right, but I think it is right.
I have no clue, but I remember seeing like a graphic of like level 10s on Faceit per like country, and Denmark was so much higher than like everywhere else. It's like how?
It's 5.9 million people. Wait, is that right? 5.9 million. Which is kind of insane.
Like crazy. Like for like this, like the population, like the amount of like great players they produced. I'm not sure if it's the same in other esports, but in Counter-Strike, it's second to none, honestly.
Oh my god, the ratio is insane for the population size. Unbelievably insane. I just felt like it was like the perfect like argument for like why culture is everything, because the culture of like being on the top there. Like if you look at like what they value on the top in the CS world, It's like, it's crazy that like they value, like they produced more in-game leaders. There's 5.9 million people and they've produced more in-game leaders than like fucking like the next 10
Every other
countries next to
country
them.
combined. Yeah,
It's crazy. How does that make sense? It only makes sense in my head because it was like a culture thing. Like the people that were like at the top, actually, who was I talking to? I talking to, who was it? Someone told me they feel like what's his face? Fetish is responsible. He was like a CS
yeah, it's
source
like a
guy.
trickle down effect. Yeah.
And he
I know
came
about
into
it.
CS:GO as kind of like the elder, and he was the guy that led actually what then ended up being the
original
Astralis core.
TSM
And
team.
yeah, it's super interesting. But apparently he whipped them into shape and created like a super strong culture right at the top. And then if you want to be the cool kid, if you want to be like a part of these teams, you had to not just be able to shoot people, but you had to like have really good team play, really good communication. You'd have to like be able to be an in-game leader. You got to be able to know that the macro, and you got to be able to like come up with all your own stuff. Like you had to really be like next level to get into the cream of the crop of Danish Counter-Strike. And that's crazy because America had the opposite problem. It's like
Nobody.
It's just
There's
no
still
one.
nobody.
It's like toxic. It's kind of like the UK. The UK's worse though.
Oh yeah, UK is definitely worse, but America, like for how big America is, it's impressive that we've had like IGLs in NA, CS, and Valorant. There's what Nitro, Stanislaw, Daps, Steel, Sean,
Dazed? What do you say? Dazed
Dazed.
counts. Yeah.
and past that, it's like FNS as well.
FNS, yeah.
Past that, it's like me. I can't even think of anyone else, dude. Like seriously, like
Dude, being an in-game leader is like a
That's
lonely,
really it,
lonely
no?
fucking club, man. It's a lonely
can't- I-
club.
I'm sure I'm forgetting someone that's like painfully obvious, but I like no, I actually don't think I am, because there was like nobody. I don't
I
think.
don't think so either.
Shazam, I guess, is another one that you could put, but he didn't do it in
Yeah.
Counter-Strike. But he did it for like what 3 years in Valorant, so
Yeah.
definitely would put him up there as well.
I guess.
But
it
yeah,
counts.
it's like it's crazy. Like there's just like there's
I-
less than 10 in 2 games over 20 years.
And how many of
obviously-
those people like wanted to do it? Like, you know, like, and weren't just like,
Oh
I
yeah,
guess I'll do it
100%. Yeah,
because I
100%.
have to.
I only did it because I knew it'd be the best thing for me. So
Nice. Well, that's smart. That's smart, man.
it's like, I might be good enough to go pro as a player, but if I want to be a pro for a long time, I should learn how to do this.
That was smart. That was like the best decision you ever made.
I think the only downside is I've never really played with any IGL apart from Steel, and even then, I don't think I got the full. I don't think I received the full like Steel IGL that he was on other teams, because it was kind of like his last team in CS. Like he kind of knew that there's a chance that he wouldn't be playing that much longer,
Yeah.
and I definitely had a bit of responsibility on Chaos even when he was like the primary IGL. But yeah, apart from him, it's like I haven't played with anyone like at all.
Mhm.
So it's kind of just like learning by failure, I guess. I think that's
Yeah.
something that I've learned a lot from. It's like you're gonna have to lose a lot. FNS told me this like 2 years ago or something, 3 years ago. It's like all I did for the first 10 years of my career was lose. So I don't know. It's, you just have to be okay with losing, I guess. I
Mhm.
think that's something that a lot of people in esports are very bad about in general, even in just life, right? Like failing doesn't feel good, but it doesn't mean you need to like give up.
Yeah. I would just forward people to the Jocko Willink like good video, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
that.
that's why just link that one for you, for whoever needs it. Two other names too that pop into my head. I think Vapin would have actually been pretty fucking sick as an IGL.
I think Vapin, yeah, I like Vapin a lot. I liked working with him when he was on Cloud9.
Yeah, I
But
feel
yeah,
like he would have been
It's
really
actually
good.
insane. There's less than 10, I think. Like I'm sure we're forgetting someone like obvious, but I don't think there was not many, bro.
I can't think of anyone. Nothing.
Like
jumps
maybe
out
like
to me.
1.6 or Source, like maybe some like old guys, but then it's like their career
Yeah.
wasn't that long, and that wasn't like when esports was like a real career path for people.
Yeah, we kind of went
So-
from the beginning of CS:GO, which I feel like is fair because
Yeah.
that's like
That's like when esports became like a real like potential
Yeah.
opportunity for people.
Yeah, had its own infra. That's like in my brain, I always separate it and say after Twitch started, like after 2012, that's when esports started. Because I'm like, before
That's a good way to
that,
put it.
there was no infrastructure. We were just like relying on sponsor money for like events and stuff. But
Nothing in
that
fraud would
monetized
just
it nicely.
be like the only salaried players for like 10 years.
Oh my god, dude, it was crazy. It was crazy. The CS players would get some of the best salaries though, and then you get like some of the. I think who had the best salary back then might have been Grubby. He did pretty well, but he had like a direct sponsorship from Intel. So, but Intel also sponsored basically everyone. Well, not
That's
everyone, but
actually crazy.
like a lot of big
Any
teams.
of the big people, yeah.
Yeah, there weren't too many like big sponsors, but they were one of the biggest ones. So actually, to be honest, shout outs to them because I think as far as I've been involved in esports, I think they've been around sponsoring stuff since like the right at the
forever. They're
beginning,
still like super involved.
Like, but yeah, pre 99, pre 2000, sorry. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. I think it's really interesting to talk to pretty much every player about like the kind of personal journey with improvement because everyone's story is kind of unique. So I've been enjoying how we've kind of like shimmying back to that briefly. I I really enjoy talking to you as just in general because again like we talked about before, like the leadership thing, it always like showed that you had like more awareness to kind of go outside yourself a little bit. And I feel like players can get really tunnel visions on what they're doing and not kind of realize kind of what's around them. And I actually think it's kind of a superpower in a way because it's the reason why one of the reasons why Will is actually so good for team. Like it's one of the reasons why I'm a big fanboy of him because he has so many like awesome intangibles that are kind of hard to come by. And so I'm wondering like in your team with the dynamics right now, and sort of just we already talked about some of the cultural elements that you've picked up from books and stuff like that. Are you having some like greater impact on your team as a whole with working with Immi who's come in? We can talk about how Immi's been for you guys as well because you've never worked with him before, I assume. I don't think you.
No, we worked on V1. We worked
together. Oh, version 1, of course.
For like the first 4 months maybe.
Right. Okay. So that must be pretty sick then. You kind of have the return of the.
It's definitely nice. I think him and James IRL are the two that I think I work the best with, like bar none. I don't even think it's close. I think I work the best with James. Immi's very close, but I think James pushed me a lot, and I think that's something that benefited me a lot.
He should be a head coach on a tier 1 team. 100%.
That guy is. I love 100%. Him so much. He's one of my like favorite humans. He's very smart, very hardworking, but it is what it is. Esports is esports,
Yeah. He really is. He's one of those people where I'm like, oh. The guy has so much merit.
Yeah.
When it comes to teams, and he never got really a great shot to actually properly coach a team in Valorant because I think from what I understand in Cloud9,
I mean, he was essentially our head coach on the 2 years we had him.
But he didn't get to pick basically have anything to do with who's coming onto the team and who's maybe leaving the team, right? Like it was mostly just strategy or.
I'm not sure, to be honest. Like prior to me, I'm not sure. I know he pushed really hard for me to join. Yeah. Him and our manager Hunmaru pushed pretty hard to get me. Other than that, no, I'm not sure how much he did. Obviously, there wasn't a lot of overturn in our roster, so it did make sense that he didn't have a ton of input because we made one change the entire time prior to franchising.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, he's. I took a bit of a side tangent there because I when you said his name, I was like, yeah,
I love James.
He's
so
awesome.
Much.
He's so awesome. He works so hard. Like he's one of those people that works really hard, and you feel bad because you're not working as hard.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's definitely a reason that I liked him so much. Is I felt like I was letting him down if I wasn't putting in a lot of hours.
Yeah, and he has the fire too. Like he knows when to switch it on. Like he can be funny and loose, but he knows when to switch that competitive energy on, and it's like he feels to me like a genuine, like he genuinely belongs in sport.
I completely agree. I mean, his family is Olympians. His dad has a Super Bowl ring, so it kind of makes sense, I guess. But
okay, that explains a lot.
He's a great guy. I really love James.
Yeah. Man. Anyway, sorry. Getting back into it. So, with regards to your stuff with Immi, have you? How active have you been, sort of working with Immi? Because obviously, also being the IGL, there are some IGLs. Like I know Def, for example. Def was someone that would be super involved with the coaches. He would actually essentially do some of the role of the head coach because he just wanted to set stuff up for the team in that way. He wanted to be that hands on. So, how are you in terms of your dynamic with Immi? Are you kind of hands on?
We work together a lot, yeah. We always meet an hour and a half before everybody else. And then we'll message here and there after practice and stuff, but we have an hour and a half that's just me, Immi, and our assistant coach Googly every day. And I think it's definitely benefited us a lot. Yeah, and that's it. I mean, we put in similar hours. I think it's pretty beneficial. I think we've been improving a lot, and it's nice to have him back, because I think I do work very well with him.
Yeah. I mean, that to me feels like if someone asks you what's the most important thing on on an attack FPS team, I would probably say the relationship between the in-game leader and the head coach is probably what I would say, because that's like the working relationship. I feel like that drives absolutely everything. The leader in the game and the leader out of the game.
I completely agree.
With Immi, do you have is the strategic vision kind of the same, or how does that kind of bounce around between you two guys?
Pretty similar. I mean, obviously we're going to disagree at points, but I think for the most part we generally see things pretty similarly. Like relying on like fundamentals. Like fundamentals should be like the building block for like any good team, unless you're Paper X, I guess, because those guys they just do whatever they want and it works. So fair enough. But yeah, I think we view things pretty similarly.
Awesome. Well, I'm curious then, as to sort of like wrap things up a little bit. I want to get sort of your take on sort of like how you feel about some of the teams in the champions, in the American Stage 1 at the moment. Let's start with 100 Thieves, just get it out of the way with. They've not had a great start to the season. And how do you feel about, I don't know how much you scrimmed them or sort of your interpretation of where they're at, but they're definitely a team that has a very high ceiling in terms of the players on the team. So yeah, how do you feel about them?
I think the biggest issue 100 Thieves have is, it's kind of, we talked about it earlier, it's like they're just so used to losing. Like that core. Like, I'm gonna go check. They haven't won a best of 3 since May 13th, 2023. Obviously, they haven't played a ton of matches. They've only played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, they've played 8 matches. That's more than I thought it was. But it's like, I think they have a very high ceiling if they can get through like the barrier, because in practice they're very great. I think Sio and Zix do a really good job together. I think even on EG last year, they did a great job together. I think from the outside, they seem to work very well together. They have a very good like understanding of the game, and they're good at like getting it to work in their system. But I think that in matches, it's hard to necessarily replicate what they're capable of in practice, because it just feels like they don't play the same because they haven't won in so long. I think if that team wins one match, they will be way, way better. I think the only issue with that team is like the Asuna Cryo like weird role like thing they have, which is kind of difficult, but I don't think it's something they're incapable of working past.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I agree with all of that. I think that's super fair. You made me excited to see, because they're going to win eventually. I hope I didn't just
in
think
practice. Those guys are one of the best teams we scrim, like without a doubt in my mind. They play like some of the best Valorant in practice, and I think it's just like a matter of time before it clicks for them on stage.
Yeah,
and I think they just need to win, like, and then they get back into like realizing that, hey, like we can win, like, and then I think when you watch them play, a lot of it looks very uninspired because it feels like they just don't remember how to win, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like we dug into that topic a little bit earlier, so that's good. It's definitely an interesting one, but I hope that they get the win. The next team then is Loud, who also started off with a loss as well.
Sadhack is Tom Brady of Valorant. Can't bet against that guy. He's made 9 events out of like 11 or 10. That guy's very inspiring for me, I guess.
Yeah.
As a team, I mean, they look good. Their roles their comps are just a little weird. I don't even think it's the roles. I just think they play like such unique Valorant that it's kind of hard to replicate, and I think it's just difficult for them to work in the environment they've been provided so far. Like, obviously, they didn't get a practice prior to this match against Energy due to visa issues. I think that's pretty unfortunate, but I think it's impossible to bet against like Sadhak, Tuiz, Kaunazine, Les. Like, you can't bet against those players. Like, they're going to be good. It's just a matter of time, I guess.
Yeah, I do love the kind of continuity and stability of that. I love that I love how they're just such a steady pair of pairs of hands on that team. EG, what do you think about EG? Actually, they're definitely an interesting one.
I don't even know. It's like, I feel like that team can be good, but I think a lot of things have to line up for them to be good.
Yeah,
I think they have the firepower, and I think the only like potential question marks for me is how comfortable is Nature IGLing. I mean, obviously he was the only one shooting back in their game against G2, so I'm not sure how it's going to like go long term, but I think Nature's a great player, and I think he's the biggest like difference maker if he can like fully adapt to being an IGL. Because I know he's done it in the past, but it's never something he's done long term. So, and I think it's hard to be an IGL if you don't necessarily like want to do it. But I mean, I think they have a really high ceiling. They just have to get there. It's kind of the same thing as 100 Thieves. I think they just need like a win to like realize like they can compete at this level.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that team seems very. That team seems like it could be very momentum-y more so than some others because I don't know, just like you say, the firepower's there. So
yeah,
if they're feeling it, it could be things could get really interesting.
I 100%.
So how about Furia?
I think they're the most underwhelming team in the league so far, but I don't think they have bad players. I think picking up NZR is a really good move. I think that guy's incredible. Like from playing against him, like last year in like scrims and stuff, he's a very, very good player. I'm not sure like the shortcomings of that team, to be honest. They look very disconnected when they play. And they looked when we played them in Colombia, they destroyed us. Like they fucking owned us and they played very well, but it seems like they haven't been able to find that level of team like consistency so far. I think they're a pretty young team overall though. Like I think all of them are under 22 except maybe NCR. So I think they have like a high ceiling, but it's like it's hard to get there, you know? Like that's what we're talking about. It's hard to get to like a high level.
Yeah. I was actually just thinking about that kind of separation that we talked about before, because I do feel like they're a team that isn't good enough to be. They kind of, at least like when I watched them, I feel like their fundamentals weren't good enough on the attacking sides, or some of them that I saw, because it kind of felt like they didn't understand how to like default and get value from it. And that made them really readable, because obviously part of the value of a default is that you can essentially create some extra guesswork for your opponent. But when they played some of their attack sides, it just felt like they were very readable because of like how they would fall one repeatedly, how much they gave up space, and it just didn't seem like they were able to leverage like the firepower on the attacking side, whereas on the defense, because they're really good at attacking. Because they're like, I love how on the defense they will have like these really cool like off timings that they'll kind of push with like 2 or 3 players and in random spots, and they'll find loads of value. And they look like they're in their element, but they can't get that aggressive energy as much on the attacking side of at least that's what I've observed.
It's a little
so
confusing.
Far.
I kind of agree with that. I feel like you're kind of right in the fact that it doesn't feel like they necessarily play with the other team a lot. Like it feels like they kind of just do what they want instead of like trying to make the other team uncomfortable, which I think is a big part of Valorant, is like making the other team as uncomfortable as possible.
I think you described it really well, what I was trying to get at, for sure. Okay. Well, their counterparts MIBR, how do you feel about them? Because I feel like they've looked pretty.
I think that team is actually good.
Pretty nice, yeah.
Like I know that like they beat us, people call us shit, whatever. I think that team is actually, that JZZ guy is fucking incredible. And I think Mazin is one of the better IGLs from Brazil. At least from like even last year on Fury, I always felt like they had pretty good stuff, but they just lacked like firepower at certain points. RGL is really good on smokes. Artsy and FRZ, I think Artsin was a little underwhelming in kickoff, but I think he has a very high mechanical ceiling, and it's just like he's a really young guy, so it's kind of just like a matter of time before he performs. I think they're a solid team. They have like a good foundation. I mean, they have Bazooka and Fraud. Like that's a good coaching staff to have. I think it's just like a matter of time before they play at their potential.
Yeah, it's a funny one because I felt like Furious firepower is better, but MIBR's fundamentals looked better. Like it looked like they were more of a team. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree.
It's interesting. Okay, well, we talked about Leviathan already. I'm pretty sure. Did we talk?
Earlier.
We did, yeah.
Earlier,
okay.
Yeah.
And it's obviously, you're on Cloud9. We talked a lot about Cloud9. So Crew have, of course, managed to get a win as well so far.
Asnet is that guy. He might be another one that I put in that list with like Osboss. That guy is really hard to kill. That team confuses. I think what you said about EG applies to Crew more than any other team in Americas. Like, if they're on, they're very hard to. Like, I mean, you saw it in LCQ, bro. They went 0-9 regular season. They got some momentum in LCQ, and they just stomped everybody.
Yeah. It's the most Brazilian thing, I feel like, for teams to like do this.
Yeah. I think they have a lot of firepower. Like Heat, Kesnet, Shy. Like those three are incredible mechanically. Klaus and Melser are like okay, they're not great, they're not horrible. Like they get the job done. If those two can maintain like a level of consistency for the others to play off of, I think they have a really high ceiling.
Yeah.
I think they do a good job at playing Valorant well, though. I think they have a very good like understanding of the game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm with you on that one. They're super interesting. It's hard to put your finger on them.
I think it's really like I think they're very momentum heavy, but I do
Yeah.
think they have a good understanding of like how they want to play Valorant. I don't think it's necessarily the same as everybody else, but they play their style and they do it well.
Yeah, I can definitely get on board with that. And just in case anyone gets mad, I know that I said Brazilian, but I know they're obviously South American mixture of players. But I stand though by the fact that, especially in the Counter-Strike scene, when we got a lot of Brazilian teams in, it felt very similar because I feel like it's just part of the style that they have a lot of the time, where they use a lot of that brute force. And so it can be like when it works, it's crazy and the momentum's insane, and they get on top of people, and it's very hard. And that was like Brazilian Counter-Strike was kind of like that. For quite some time. So that's why I said Brazilian, because it feels like in South America there is that still that general kind of stylistic choice that some gravitate toward. But it is interesting to see which teams kind of lean away from that. And obviously I think Ona was like a really big impact there as a coach, because I think, he obviously sought to make his teams very disciplined, which is kind of the opposite of that play style. So kind of interesting as a commentary on how the kind of culture is developing, how to play the game in South America. But moving on, we talked about Sentinels already. So yeah, the last two are interesting, NRG and G2. So NRG, a team that's definitely considered the super team going into the season as far as the NA teams are concerned.
Yeah, 100%.
How do you feel about like how they've looked so far?
They looked really good against Loud. They were really close to qualifying for Madrid. So I mean, they're a good team. I think the biggest question mark is the roles are a little weird, but it seems like they've kind of just committed to putting Demon 1 on permanent duelist, even if it's Raze. And I think that'll help them a lot, because like flip-flopping roles can work for certain teams, but I think it can also cause inconsistencies. Like when you're going from like, say you're Victor, right? You go from one map you're on Cypher, the next map you're on Raze. I feel like that might be a little like weird. I think it seems like they're leaning into just putting Demon 1 on all the duelists, and I think that's something that's going to benefit them. I mean, they have a great team. Like, you can't really say anything about them other than that. Like, Ethan's one of the most tenured NA players of all time in like FPS games. Obviously, I think it's like he's going to be a good IGL. It'll probably take some like learning curve, but I mean, he's been doing a great job so far, and I think they're one of the best in America, hands down.
It's actually kind of funny with the Ethan comment, because he's like the most tenured player, because he's like
he
23 or something, and he's like he's kind of young, but
for, like, dude, how long is he playing?
He's been playing for a long time.
2016, right? You know, I scrimmed with Ethan in ESEA Open.
Oh, really?
Happy Cheetos. It was on Dust 2. I remember it.
Nice. I have to look up his age now, because like
he's 24.
He's 24, and I think he's been playing competitively
since 2016. Yeah, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, so he's good. So he's pretty. So the reason I'm bringing that up is actually because it actually kind of feels like if Ethan's gonna make kind of like a switch to an IGL, it's actually like kind of a good time to do it. Yeah,
I completely agree.
He's got a lot of experience, but he's still like very young, so he could have like this whole new arc to who he is as a player.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he's one of the best players in America. Like fundamentally, I don't think he makes mistakes ever. Honestly,
yeah,
I think he's one of the only players that I feel like he never makes mistakes. Very rarely, if so.
Yeah, he's great to watch. He's definitely one of those players where you're like, if you want to learn how to play the game from any pro, this is the guy you could watch because of the methodical play style.
Yeah, it's the most like repeatable. Like he just does things that are like he's very like low risk. Like he takes good. If he takes a risk, it's because he knows he has to do it. Other than that, he's very consistent in like the way he plays. He does like everything in his power to like make sure they're in the best position to win the rounds.
Yeah, he's almost. I don't know if the comparison completely works, but he's almost kind of like a version of ZipX that has like way better mechanics. Kinda, I feel like.
I could
in terms. And maybe I'm stretching a little bit because I don't think Ethan ends. I mean, it's CS, so like Ethan doesn't end up getting some of the similar like clutch positions as ZipX maybe would.
Sometimes you just can't in this game. It's just how it works. But yeah, I feel like if he's in a clutch, I feel like you bet on Ethan most of the time. If it's like remotely winnable.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how because it's one thing I do tell people like, okay, if you want to kind of figure out how positioning works, okay, watch a pro, figure out what their objective is of what they're trying to do, and then you can kind of basically extrapolate like all the logic because it just the rest is just obvious at that point. So you just have to figure out those things, and then you can
I think
figure out their
Ethan is
pathing and positioning.
honestly the best player in the world at taking like isolating fights. I don't think there's very few players who are good at like just moving around and making sure he's only exposing himself to the angle he wants to fight.
Yeah,
It's at least last year on EG. Energy, they haven't played a ton of matches this year, and I haven't watched a ton of them either. And it's obviously such a small sample size, but yeah, last year it's like he never puts himself in positions where he has to fight more than one angle. And I think it's very like honestly incredible how consistently he's able to do it.
yeah, it's amazing to watch. It's so beautiful to watch. It's another thing I tell people is like that they may. I mean, it may be one of those things that we take for granted a bit, but like pros, every single step that a pro takes when they're going from position A to position B, like the lines and the pathing and the timing is all deliberate. Every single part of it's deliberate.
Unless you're a duelist player.
Yeah, that is like better if it's not
then
deliberate.
you have a jet dash, a raised satchel. You do whatever you want, bro. Have fun.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's true. But yeah, I love how like watching Ethan, you get to kind of see the process. It's like such a good way to like learn the game, and it's beautiful. It's like actually beautiful to watch something that's so optimized. Yeah. Okay, well, G2 is the only team we didn't talk about, and obviously they picked up a win against EG, so perhaps I would say probably an expected win. I feel like we haven't yet seen them super tested, so I'm curious how you think about them.
They're good. Like I don't think there's another way to put it. Like Valen, Jonah, Trent are all like an incredible core. They added Leaf, who's probably one of my favorite teammates of all time. He's probably one of the best players in America of all time. Like individually at least, I don't think there's many people who are able to consistently perform statistically at the same level he was. I think he has a great understanding of the game. If he watches this, Leaf, you suck, but yes, he's an incredible player, good teammate. I don't know, they have I think Icy is also really underrated. I think people are going to underestimate how good he is capable of being. Obviously, if he's able to perform it on the stage, is a different story. But I think his potential is very, very high. He's a very selfless teammate as well. So I think that's something that is going to benefit them in the long run.
Well, if he is watching this, what is one thing that he can do to be a better player?
Leaf or Icy?
Leaf.
Stop playing so much RuneScape, probably. I don't even know if he plays RuneScape anymore, but nah, I have nothing but praise for.
you gotta have a side game, the side bay game.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. What's your side bay game? I don't know.
I play World of Warcraft now.
World of Warcraft?
Yeah, I've been playing Season of Discovery a lot.
Man.
It's like slow pace though. It's like I don't need to play a lot. I just play like a couple hours every couple of nights.
Dude, how old are you? I wonder if it came out after you were born.
No. I've been playing WoW since I was like 8. Like on and off, like not consistently, like on and off.
Okay. It's kind of funny now because WoW like classic obviously is like 2003.
I think was when WoW came out. That's WoW is older than Oxy. That's actually insane, bro. Holy fuck.
Yeah, it's a good way to feel old. Oh my god. Okay, well, I don't have any other questions for you. I feel like you've entertained me for long enough, hour and 40 minutes. I wanted to make it shorter, but honestly, you're so easy to talk to. It's your fault. It's not my fault. It's your fault.
It's okay.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure. Do you have any shout outs or anything for the wrap up here?
Thanks to everyone who supports me. I probably wouldn't be here if I didn't have like 3 fans, but seriously, thank you guys. Thank you to everyone who watches esports. Doesn't matter if you're a fan of me or not. You guys make it possible to compete, and it means a lot.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, man. I'm sure I'll see you on the next one, which we'll do. I'm sure shortly, as you're regular now.